Blindspot Season 2, Episode 9, Why Let Cooler Pastor Deform. As the fall finale, this was pretty freaking amazing. And I didn't know it was the fall finale because I had to watch the last episode on Hulu, so they never do promos on there. And as I was going through it, I was like, this seems like it could be the fall finale, but I wasn't 100% sure how everything was going to play out. So as I'm going through it, I'm like, there's a lot of stuff happening. There are a lot of huge changes that make a lot of sense, for the mid-season finale, which always are fun episodes to watch because they're about as good as season finales, except we actually get to come back, to the story much sooner. So, going through this, the first thing I really want to talk about is Borden officially being announced as the traitor within the FBI. And I kind of called it. As I mentioned, he was my first main suspect, and it was solely based on the way they did it when they were showing all the people during the first episode of the season, where they're like, we have, whoever that it's going to be. And it was like, yeah, I just felt like it was him. And, things seemed oddly suspicious. Him, like I said, when he was talking the other, I forgot what it was. I think it was French or something like that. And it's like, it was oddly suspicious. He's, random things. It's just being suspicious about it. And so it goes through, and we find out that it's him. Jane finds out the truth behind it. And we actually get a flashback as to how he ended up joining Sandstorm, which I thought was really cool because I didn't expect that. I figured it would just be the reveal, and then it would kind of just continue on from there because they were already doing a bunch of other crazy stuff. But a nice chunk of this episode was dedicated to what happened to Jane after she was in the explosion. And I didn't think that would have anything to do with Borden. It was like, they mentioned that it was a woman and stuff like that. And they're like, what if she remembers? I didn't think it would have anything to do with, the mole or anything like that. I just assumed, like I said during that episode, I thought maybe it was Shepard that saved her, and for whatever reason they didn't want to tell her that because there was, just other stuff there that they didn't want her to know yet. So, when that was revealed, I was like, oh, that's really interesting, and we get to see Borden and we get to see his wife Chris and their time with Jane as, basically they help her recuperate, and she was there, based on the way they kind of did it, she had to have been there for like a month or so. And they're protecting this woman, and of course Borden was freaking out about it. He was like, maybe we shouldn't protect her and stuff like that, but eventually, they kind of become friends with her. And then we find out that the reason Borden really joined Sandstorm is because he kind of had nothing else left to live for. His wife was killed during a bombing because the U.S. government was looking for Jane. And so they targeted this village, like, alright, we believe that she's somewhere in this vicinity. So they just dropped bombs and killed a bunch of people. So that's how he ends up joining with Sandstorm. And we also find out that, even though Jane was working for the government, and I thought this was interesting, and I don't know if it'll really have an important role later on, but she mentioned, like, my family's, she was about to, start it, but she was basically saying her family was already doing stuff pretty much as Sandstorm to start, taking things down. So I thought that was really interesting. And it's like, I don't know if her being in the Navy to begin with was a part of that, or if she was trying to actually be a part of the U.S. government, and then it's like, no, things really do suck with this government, and that's why she decided to officially join Sandstorm. But I thought it was interesting. I didn't think it started until, way after the Orion thing, but she made it seem like they were started, as she was in the Navy, they had already begun doing things like that. So I thought that was actually kind of interesting when that kind of kicked off. And then, we go through the rest of the episode and we have just the craziest confrontation. Like, Jane is, she's tied up for most of this episode, and so she's going through, she's trapped, she finds out the truth, and it's her brother, and her mother, and things are just crazy. It's like, Roman has to make a decision. Shepard, she already made her decision. She knows what she wants. And it just didn't play out at all like I was expecting. Like, that was probably, like, that in itself could have been a great way to end the episode with that storyline where they go through this whole process and Shepard tells Roman to kill Jane. Of course, he can't do it. He points the gun at Shepard. The gun clicks because there's not an actual bullet in there. And then they actually have a whole fight scene where the two of them team up against Shepard, and she gets shot, but she doesn't get killed, so she is still alive as the main villain. She's just, on her own now. And then they go through the process of Jane helping Roman, and she hits him with the memory, the zip. And so he loses his memory, and now he can be one of the good guys. And I don't know how that's going to play out. I mean, I don't see them taking him in because, of course, he doesn't have his memories, but it's really hard to say. Like, I don't know if they're gonna accept Jane's idea where it's like, hey, wiped his memory, let's just tell him he's a good guy and this and that. I don't know. It's really hard to say how that's gonna play out. And then, of course, well, Jane's been doing this for quite a while, and her memory hasn't really come back, so I'm sure they'd have a very long time before he remembered everything that happened. But, excuse me, I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see how they do this, because now that he's lost his memory, technically he could be one of the good guys, just like Jane, because she was on, you know, like her whole thing was that she was all in on this mission, and now she's not because she's kind of a different person than who she used to be. So I don't really know what to expect with how they're even going to just use his character at this point. But I'm very excited to see it. Hopefully he does join the team. I feel like that's the only thing that they can do, because otherwise he would just be locked up or something like that. But they also have no reason to. Well, they have reason to, technically, but there's kind of no purpose, because at this point, mentally speaking, I guess he's an innocent man, but logically speaking, he's still, you know, a criminal. But I don't know. I'm excited to see how they kind of follow or don't follow the rules in this crazy situation. But it was very interesting. And then, of course, we have the mission with the team. So, of course, everybody goes out. Jane, and I thought this from the beginning as well. When it started off, I was like, okay, the first time it was simple enough. It was like, hey, I'll be right back. You know, don't leave this room. I'll be right back. And she gets the phone and stuff. And I was like, all right, that's one thing. And then they get to Shepard, and it's like, something's going on. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Just wait here. And I was like, I'm pretty sure these are tests. Like, I'm almost 100% sure that they're testing her now. And of course, that's exactly what ends up happening, and that's how she gets busted. But I like that. I was like, this 2 times in a row. Like, one time, all right. It's supposed to be like 3 times, and it's, you know, suspicious. But I was like, with these people, if it's 2 times, you should probably consider something's going on. So, of course, that's how she ends up getting busted. Well, that's not necessarily how, but it turns out that that was the case, and that's how they ended up using her to trap the team and almost killing some of the main characters. Of course, random people got killed off all over the place because the whole thing came down on top of them. But fortunately, all the main characters do end up making it out. Zapata, she gets out first because she was warned, so she was, you know, closest to the door. Reed, fortunately, survives. I thought they were going to do something crazy where it was like he would lose a leg or something insane for a minute there, just because of how the whole situation was playing out. Fortunately, you know, Na survives as well, so the whole team makes it, but we do get a pretty cool revelation. And I mentioned this before as well. This is the thing with Reed and Zapata, where he mentioned the timeline thing. This is before we're officially, you know, shown that he's not the one that did it. Or maybe it was after. I think I mentioned, it may have been before, it may have been after, but I mentioned, like, even if he didn't kill him, they talked about the timeline and everything, and I'm like, if that's true, then he had enough time to get up there, and he probably watched him die. And we find out that that is exactly what happened. He got up there in enough time, and he did stand over him. He did just watch him die. And it made a lot of sense, because, like I said, that was my guess. I was like, that's probably what happened, because why would he save this guy? He was getting away with all this insane stuff. He hadn't seen who done it at that point. He just saw the aftermath. And it's like, well, this guy sucks. You know, like, that's all there is to it. He's just a bad person. And he let him go. And I thought that was very interesting. But it does seem like everything's kind of okay. They do mention that the evidence is kind of back in lockup, and they were looking for Reed's friend and everything like that. So I guess that storyline is gone. Nothing bad is going to be happening. So I was happy about that, because that's what I was really worried about. I was like, I feel like something bad's still going to happen, but it seemed like everything worked out, and it just, you know, led to that final revelation from Reed. But I thought that was a really good scene. And then we still don't know what the heck is going to happen with Weller, because he gets sent off. And you know, when it happened, I was like, man, they can't just have like a normal situation where she just has the kid and they just have a, you know, relationship where they aren't together. It had to be like tragic, and he has to choose, you know, who lives and who dies. So I was glad that wasn't the case. But now we have it where Weller's away from the team. He's headed, you know, he's with the team, so nothing happens like actually in the episode, but there's something else for him. They didn't want him to die, so I'm sure this has something to do with the fact that they've been watching him forever. So there's another layer to it, but now that mystery's in there. Like, what in the world is the plan against Weller that he should live, compared to everybody else on the team? So there's some really weird stuff there. Like, I don't know what to expect from that, but that's interesting, and we don't see it in this episode. That's what I thought was going to happen. They were going to either, torture him or something, like take him and torture him in this episode, but ultimately nothing happens. He gets back to the team and everything kind of works out fine. So that's still kind of up in the air as to what they have planned for him, but they were going to kill everybody and leave him alive. So that means something. That means a lot. They were even going to kill Jane. So that says a ton, that they were going to leave him alive, and they were even about to kill, Jane off for, not actually being on the side of Sandstorm. So a lot of mysteries up in the air. And then, of course, we have the actual end of this episode, and they go through with Patterson, and she gets to the house, and she sees Borden, and she sees the ring. And at first I didn't realize, what she said, because I rewound it, and then when I saw him put the ring on the second time after I rewound, I was like, oh, that's the ring from the drawing. And then, of course, they show the drawing and mention it, and I was like, oh, didn't have to rewind it. But she catches him, and he's like, oh, my phone's been, crappy lie or whatever, and she sees the gun in the backpack, and she remembers the ring, and she confronts him, and then they have a crazy little shootout, and then they fight at the end, and one of them has been shot, and we have no idea who, and that was the most insane cliffhanger, because as it was happening, and that's what made me realize, as soon as it ended that way, that's when I knew it had to be the fall finale, because I'm like, there's no way that this is just a normal episode ending, this is some finale type stuff. And of course, bullet goes off, they both look shocked at each other, so who knows who was shot, and then it just goes off, and it's like, yep, coming back, in January. So I don't freaking know what to think. It's really hard to say, because there's no real reason to not choose one over the other, because she doesn't necessarily have to be dead if it ends up being Patterson, and Borden doesn't necessarily have to die either. They always do that in TV shows, but you don't really die getting shot in the stomach unless it hits a vital organ, and granted it's the stomach, so basically if you shoot through, you probably get something vital, but they do it where people just die instantaneously. That doesn't really happen, but I don't know. It's hard to say. Plus, with them being at such close range, the bullet is sort of a through and through type of thing, which is normally easier, but that also means you bleed more because you have two holes in your body. So it's hard to say. The person could die if they're shot, but they could easily do it where they don't die. So I don't know what to expect. I wouldn't think that they would kill Patterson, because no one else would take over, could take her place. And then also with everything they're doing with Nas, where she kind of has a ticking clock right now where she might get fired. The whole point of the scene in the last episode of her giving Patterson the card was so that Patterson could take her position once things get really crazy. And, they could change all that around. Who knows? I just don't know. I doubt that they'd kill off a main character, at least one of the heroes, but Borden could be dead. Patterson could at least be wounded, and Borden could live. So that's not the best case scenario. It would just be that Borden gets shot. But story-wise, I think the coolest scenario would be that Borden technically lives and he goes to be off with Sandstorm, and then Patterson just simply survives being shot. So it's hard to say, but great finale for sure. It just went crazy. No real phase 2 in this, but a lot of important stuff happened. So I'm excited for the show to come back. I really don't know what to expect. It was just a great ending. And then, we have the stuff with Roman. We have Shepard, probably going full force at this point, because she's been betrayed by both her children. At least that's how she feels. So it's just a totally different position for a lot of these characters now. So I'm very excited for this show to come back. Great finale, fall finale episode, of course. Definitely want to know what you guys thought about it. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And I want to know your predictions for who is shot, of course. It's how the way they ended, that has to be the first question. Who do you think was wounded? How do you think it'll play out if one of the characters will live and die, or if they'll both live and one's just wounded? who's going to be wounded, you know, all that stuff. And my second question is definitely, what do you guys think is going to happen with Roman now that his memory is going to be wiped, or has been wiped? Because there are a lot of easy possibilities, but some stuff they would have to really work around the logic, because the fact that his memory is wiped, like I said, mentally he's an innocent man, but technically he's still like a super criminal. So even if he doesn't remember, it's like, yeah, he's still on record as being this dude who killed a buttload of people and all this other stuff. So they could easily arrest him, but it's also television, and so they might just move some things around, and it's like, well, you know, we'll keep him on the team and keep tabs on him, and maybe, because they'll probably do the same thing they did with Jane, and just be like, all right, well, instead of imprisoning him, let's let him walk around, because anything he remembers in flashes, you know, simple arguments and stuff like that, he still won't feel that same way because he lost his memory, based on what we've seen with Jane, at least. So even if he gets, you know, memories that they don't necessarily want, I'm sure the good would outweigh the bad. Like, they'll probably utilize him and have him move around just like Jane in the first season. It's like, hey, let's just have her walk around and see if anything triggers any sort of memories within her. And maybe they'll do the same thing, you know, with Roman, but who knows? You know, it's really hard to say, but I would love to know your predictions. And of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this fall finale episode. So please comment below, let me know. And of course, thanks for watching.